all have our stories when it comes to forgiveness and making amends. We all have our stories. You know, when you think about forgiveness and making amends, it applies to all of us. I have told some of you of my experience when I was 13 years old and getting shipped up to live in beautiful downtown Maple Lake. There is no downtown Maple Lake. Middle of nowhere, little hobby farm, Maple Lake. I couldn't live with my dad and any longer after my stepmom disappeared and subsequently died, and so I was shipped up to live with my mom and my stepfather in Maple Lake, and things weren't good. Things were violent, actually. And I remember to this day, the day that it all came crashing down, and I realized I cannot live here. I cannot be here anymore. And during this time, I had this really good friend at school, and it was the last week of school, maybe the last day of school, and I remember my friend and I were out for a walk at lunch, and my friend, he just asked a question. He just made a comment. He just said something. And it's like I exploded. There was this anger that was just pouring out on me. And I swore at my friend, and I called my friend things that you should not call anybody. And I can still remember the hurt in his eyes as he walked away. I was just turned 14 at the time. I'm 57 now, so you do the math. You know, I bring up that story this morning because when it comes to forgiveness and making amends, I know the weight of not making amends. I try to find my friend when all of a sudden I realized, you know, at a much later age, what I had done and how I never should have said those things to my friend, how I should have got back to him and said, I am sorry. You were a good friend. I never should have said those things to you, but I couldn't find him anywhere. I know the weight of not making amends in one's life. But I also raise it this morning because there is this principle of recovery. It combines two steps, if you're familiar with AA, but it goes like this. Evaluate all my relationships. That's how it starts. And maybe you were here a couple of weeks ago when we talked about a moral or a life inventory, about how important it is at times to just stop and look over your life and say, okay, what were the high points? You know, let's celebrate those. What were the difficult points? And are those still adding baggage to my life? Do I need to address them? Do I need to deal with them? If you weren't here, that talk is on our podcast. You can access moral life inventories online. Just Google it, and you will get one of those inventories that you can go through. But look at where it takes that inventory this morning. It says, offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me. Offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me. Now, we realize right away that just saying that is a big deal. A big deal. And then it goes one step further, and it says, and make amends for harm I have done to others. Now notice, here's the caveat, right? Except when to do so would harm them or others. Except when to do so would harm them or harm others. Make amends. Say, I'm sorry for harm I have done to others. When it comes to forgiveness and making amends, we realize that really this is always two sides to the same coin. Forgiveness and making amends are always traveling together. We always experience these together. One of us experiences one or the other of these in our relationship, and we struggle with these. I would say to you, well, I know personally the weight that comes from failing to make amends. As a pastor, listening to people for 20 going on 30 years actually now, that this issue right here is the deepest pain in people's lives. This issue of forgiveness and of making amends is one of the biggest points of tension in people's lives. If you're feeling that that's true of you, it's true for a lot of people. Forgiveness and making amends is this really weird, difficult thing for a lot of us. On one hand, we can think, well, Why? Why forgive? Why make amends? You know, if I said sorry to God, then why do I need to say sorry to anybody else? You know, if God knows my past, if he's taking care of my past, why do I need to dig up the past? When it comes to extending forgiveness to someone that's done you harm or hurt, it's kind of like, well, why would I want to forgive someone who's already injured me, who's caused me pain, who's done me? Why would I want to do that? That just seems like forgiving them would add more pain into my life. Well, as we wrestle, and we do wrestle with forgiveness and making amends, I am reminded of this powerful experience that takes place between Jesus, a bunch of religious guys, and to put it delicately, this lady of the night. And the setting is this. There is this party that Jesus is invited into. And it's not a party like a celebration, woohoo, let's have balloons and cake kind of party. It's a party because these religious guys, they want to trap Jesus. They want to get Jesus. They don't want to hear Jesus' wisdom. They're just like, how can we trap Jesus? Let's throw a party and maybe we can trick them. And so the setting is there are these self-righteous, religious guys reclining around a table at a meal, and Jesus, as it were, is in the hot seat. And there is suddenly like this bomb that goes off. Now this would be awkward in our day, but it was unheard of in Jesus' day. Because this woman, this lady of the night, this woman of ill repute, she walks into the room uninvited, and she falls down at the feet of Jesus. And just look with me at what this incredibly brave and courageous woman does. The experience, it goes like this. You just give me the scriptures there. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life, everybody knew who she was, learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. This guy's name was Simon. He was a Pharisee. He was a religious expert. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. And that alabaster jar tells us that this perfume in the jar, it was something special. In fact, most experts believe this perfume was called nard. And the value of that nard is that it was worth about a year's earnings, a year's wages. And so this woman is literally taking that substance that was equal to about a year's wages, and notice what she does with it. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. I mean, just picture this. And then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. And so we have this powerful, moving picture of this woman who has lived this certain kind of life, who comes into this environment that women just did not come to because there was such tightly defined customs and protocols around how men and women engaged in public. I mean, we would say that would be kind of awkward if that happened at one of our dinner parties. But in Jesus' day, this was an absolutely unheard of type of experience. And so this woman engages with Jesus. And one of the reasons that this experience is so powerful and so relevant is that it applies directly to what we're talking about. It applies directly to forgiveness, to helping us find our way when it comes to forgiveness. Helping us find our way when it comes to making amends when we've done something wrong to someone else. And this becomes clear through what happens next, because while the actions of this woman are incredibly powerful all and in themselves, Jesus takes this moment and this experience and literally, while this woman is down at Jesus' feet, Jesus tells this story. he engages with these self-righteous guys with this story that communicates this one overarching, powerful, transforming principle when it comes to forgiveness and making amends. And just look up here. This is the story that Jesus tells. And Jesus says, a man loaned money to two people, 500 pieces of silver to one, and 50 pieces to the other. Now, pieces of silver, what is that? But it was a lot of money. You know, silver had value. And so you had a lot of silver to one guy. You had less silver to another guy. And this money is loaned to them. And then we read, but neither of them could repay him. So he kindly forgave them both, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? And Jesus is addressing this Pharisee, this host of the party, this guy named Simon. Now we look at that little story that Jesus tells and we go, wow, like a banker did that? Like, we know the value of money, right? We know the value of loans. We know what it's like to have a mortgage on our house or to pay rent or to have a line of credit. We know about all of those things. And you think, you know what? If my banker forgave my debt, I'd love him too. The more that he forgave, the more that I would love him. But Jesus isn't actually talking about money. He's talking about relationship, the value of relationship, the value, the incredible worth of forgiveness, and what forgiveness and making amends actually can do, and how it can change and transform a person's life. Because notice what Jesus does next, following this incredibly powerful story he tells. He says, Simon answered the question, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt. That's the end of the story. But then we go to, then Jesus turned to the woman and said to Simon. Jesus turns to this woman who, just picture this, okay? The woman down at his feet. The woman that's been shedding her tears at the feet of Jesus. The woman that's been drying his feet with her hair, right? Like awkward at any social gathering. And the woman who's taken this incredibly expensive perfume and is literally the word used in the day was anointing. It was actually a preparation that was used at burial, that somehow she had a deeper sense of who Jesus was and what he was about. And Jesus draws everyone's attention, not away from the woman, but actually to the woman. See, he says, look at this woman kneeling here. And I think probably every man in that room was trying to avoid looking at the woman. They didn't want to pay attention to the woman. You know, they were giving Jesus the stink eye, but they weren't really wanting to look at this, in their mind, the scarlet letter, this immoral woman. This woman that actually doesn't even have a name in the story. Like everyone else has a name. The host has a name. Jesus has a name. This woman, her name isn't mentioned. And I almost have a picture like, you know what we do as parents or grandparents sometimes with our kids, you know, like when they're all over the place, and we're like, focus, like right here, like look at this. And it's almost like Jesus is taking everybody's attention, going, look right here. Because you're condemning this person. You're thinking in your mind, that person, they need forgiveness, right? I know what they did. And notice how Jesus goes on. He says, when I entered your home, you didn't offer me water to wash the dust from my feet, but she has washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I first came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, but she has anointed my feet with rare, and we could say expensive perfume. Now, these were all just courtesies of the day. This is what was expected to anyone as a guest that came into your home. You just did this. It was just like the common practice that you poured out on your guests. Welcome to my home. Here is my expression that I am glad that you're here. And so Jesus is saying, Simon, you didn't do this. Look at this woman. She has been anointing my feet with rare perfume. Simon, what have you done? And then we read, I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven. So she has shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven little shows only little love. Then Jesus said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. You're judging, you're condemning, you're actually the one that has disrespected me. You, host of the party, are the one who has not treated me with the common courtesy that is due a guest, and yet all you can do is point at this woman, focus on what this woman has done, and bring your condemnation towards her. You know, forgiveness, as we said, is such a crazy thing. It's such an awkward thing. It's such an uncomfortable thing. Forgiveness and making amends, I'm kind of using them together as a pair this morning. They're such an awkward thing. You know, so often it seems like our default as people is that when we encourage each other to forgive, you know, when a pastor gets up and talks about forgiveness and making amends, our default is like, why are you punishing me? Why are you making me do that? Like, I've been harmed. If it's someone that's done something against me, it's like, well, I've been harmed. I've been hurt. I've suffered. I've felt pain. Why are you punishing me, making me to forgive? Or we feel the same way, frankly, when it comes to making amends. Why are you making this hard on me? What are you doing to me? There's been so much written, so much excellent material written on forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness. Maybe you've heard the words of the writer Anne Lamott, who puts forgiveness into perspective when she says this. She says, not forgiving is like drinking rat poison and then waiting for the rat to die. It's like you drink the rat poison and then you wait for the rat to die. And we go, what? That's not how it works. Like, you drink the rat poison? What do you think the rat's doing? Woohoo! Right? The rat's cheering you on. He's like, here, have another glass, right? It's like, you drink the poison. It doesn't affect the rat whatsoever. And as a writer, and so there's a lot being said in that one phrase, but the idea is this, that unforgiveness, that failing to make amends, it's actually poison in our lives. When we carry around unforgiveness, when we're resistive to making amends, when we don't want to say, I'm sorry, right? When we're just like, no way, I'm not doing that. You know what's happened? We drank the poison. And we think in drinking the poison that we're actually hurting this person that has done us wrong. Whereas if we believe Jesus, if we even just respect Jesus and what he's saying, Jesus is saying the unforgiveness, the failing to make amends, it's like poison in your life. Forgiveness is the gift. Forgiveness is what sets you free from prison. Forgiveness is what makes you come alive. Forgiveness is what gives you joy. Forgiveness is what sets you out of the trap. You don't forgive. You fail to make amends, and what happens? It's like you have imprisoned yourself with these bars of unforgiveness in our life. And so you think, well, what hope then does Jesus give us? If we live at this point of tension where somebody does something to us and we think, no, forgiveness is more punishment, what do we do? What does Jesus say is the solution? The solution is this. He is saying, through the actions of this woman, contrasted against Simon the Pharisee, the religious professional, Jesus is saying, you need a greater love. You need to experience, you need to see, You need to have a greater love in your life, a love that gives you a greater sense of security, a love that gives you a greater sense of identity, that is larger than your pain, that is larger than your suffering, that is larger than the hurt that you've experienced, a greater love that empowers you and becomes a catalyst in you that overcomes that hurt, that pain, that suffering that you've experienced. And frankly, the same is true in giving us the ability, a greater love, to overcome the resistance that we naturally feel, to make amends when we feel disrespected, when we feel dishonored. A greater love is what Jesus encourages us through the example of this precious woman, is what we need to find. We see this exemplified in the actions of this woman. This woman who shows us, who was willing to break all the customs of her day. And there were so many protocols and customs that she was breaking to bravely and courageously come to the feet of Jesus and pour out her tears, pour out her love, pour out her generosity, frankly, pour out her wealth, because she had encountered and experienced a love and a forgiveness for herself that was so much greater than anything that she had ever comprehended before. See, that's who Jesus is. That's what Jesus offers you in the midst of forgiveness. Forgiving others, forgiving yourself, making amends to others that you have harmed. What does Jesus offer us? He offers us himself, because there is this almost incomprehensible moment that takes place on the cross that Jesus died on. Because we read that while Jesus hung on this cross, the result of this torture, of this beating, of this betrayal, of this shame that was put upon him, of this cursing, all of the abuse that Jesus received, that as he hangs on this cross, shedding his blood, his body broken, he says this: Father, forgive them. Forgive them. Literally dying on the cross. They don't know. They don't know what they're doing. Jesus didn't die for his own sin. We believe Jesus is the Son of God. God come in the flesh. Perfect, holy, sinless. Jesus didn't die for his sin. He wasn't paying the price for his own sins. Like, hey, Jesus, you hang on the cross, you shed your blood for your own sin. No. Jesus didn't die for the sins, just the sins of those people in his immediate presence who had been a part of crucifying. Jesus died for the sins of the entire world, so that you and I and every man, woman, and children who has ever lived can know what we call the good news, that your debt can be forgiven, that you can be set free from the burden of debt that you and I all carry with us in relationship with God. And Jesus is like this bomb that explodes all of that, while at the same time paying the price for the debt that is owed, so that you and I can know that we have been set free. That debt has been paid in full, that now we are defined not by our sin, not by our wrongs, not by our pain, not by our hurt, not by our suffering, but by our Savior. That Jesus has become the one in and through him where we can know and have our lives informed that now we are dearly beloved children of our Heavenly Father. And because it's evidenced in the incomparable love that's been enacted for you and I, what this woman shows us is that that love and that forgiveness isn't something that we just experience. It becomes something we experience to become a catalyst and a point of transformation in us. Remember, Jesus says, notice, so she has shown me much love. So she has shown me much love. How are we introduced to her? This woman that lived a sinful life. It's kind of like, what? She's showing love to Jesus, like down on her knees, weeping, pouring out a year's worth of her earnings just so she can anoint Jesus. And Jesus is saying, love like that. Love like that. Live in the awareness. Live in the gratitude. Live in the wonder that your debt has now been paid in full. Allow that to become the catalyst in you to love like that. And people may watch you. People may observe you, and they do, and wonder, why? Why do you love like that? Why do you forgive like that? Why are you so kind to people who treat you so poorly? And how do we respond? Love, love, love. Not weak, fluffy love. Oh, that's good too. Powerful love that rocked this world like this world has never been rocked. That becomes like this explosion and point of transformation and change in a person's life because they have encountered the magnitude of who Jesus is and what he has done. And the person of Jesus becomes this catalyst that sends us out into the very painful relationships of life with a different heart. That forgives others from the experience of knowing what it's like to be forgiven. And I might add, propels us to make amends to others and say, I'm sorry. To do what we can do when we have caused pain to others because we live in the wonder of what this Jesus has done for us. Now, you still might ask the question this morning, how do we do that? When someone does this to me, I'm just not like, oh, yeah, I forgive you. You know, the blood pressure goes up. Lay in your bed at night and you picture that ugly mug of this other person, like, man, I would, right? I mean, come on. What do you do? What do we do? We focus on Jesus. We look to Jesus. I would use this word. We meditate on Jesus. Continually looking at the magnitude of love and forgiveness that he so lovingly and so willingly enacted for us. Because as we see that and as we experience that, it literally transforms and empowers us in all of our relationships. Maybe you're here this morning and you're going, I can't do this. I can't go back there. I don't know what to do. I am stuck. I don't even know if I want to. Remember, you're drinking the rat poison and you're waiting for the rat to die. Forgiveness is a gift that's been given to you to set you free, to give you health and to give you life. And if you feel stuck this morning, I know John and I would both love to talk to you. If you feel stuck this morning, there are so many great resources out there. The Art of Forgiveness, The Path of Forgiveness, Dr. Desmond Tutu wrote about, in the midst of the horror of some of the things that have taken. There is so much good information out there. You can look up the steps of AA or Celebrate Recovery and find your next steps to set you free. Let me pray together with you. Heavenly Father, oh, it is so easy to talk about forgiveness and making amends. It is so difficult at times to practice it. And so I pray this morning for each one of us that experience of a greater love. That who you are, Jesus, what you have done, the full extent of your love and your forgiveness, that it would compel us in those very difficult relationships of life to exemplify you and allow your love and forgiveness to motivate and compel us. I ask in your name, Jesus.